Hi there, it's George from Any Old Music again. Today I have a video that I've wanted to create for you for a while, basically stimulated by a need to create something for last week's Introduction to Orchestration trailer or video, whatever you want to call it. I recently embarked on a miniature musical adventure where I took on an old silent cinema cue and brought it to life through orchestration. So grab your popcorn and get ready to join me on this creative journey where we'll explore silent cinema a little and then take a look at my orchestration and how I adapt a piano score for a double winds orchestra. First things first then, let me introduce you to the star of our show, Western Rodeo by Adolph Minot. I stumbled upon this, or I suppose these hidden gems, on imslp.org a little while ago. Western Rodeo is part of a collection called the Cinema Incidental series that was published and distributed in the early 20th century. These compositions were specifically designed to accompany silent movies, providing live underscores to enhance the cinematic experience by helping convey the story. Historians also think the use of music in silent cinema helped bury the general hustle and bustle, or I suppose awkward silence of the audience, and also the mechanical noises of early projection equipment. The Cinema Incidental series is a treasure hoard of musical moods and character pieces. It's fascinating how arrangers and composers created these compositions to match typical scenes and emotions in early silent cinema. For example, if you look through the collection, there's a sorrow theme or sorrow themes, love themes, dramatic themes, and a personal favourite title of mine is Creepy Creeps. They're a great window into the past and a fine look at the earliest art of film scoring. Now returning to our protagonist, Adolph Minot's Western Rodeo, number 18 in the selection, this piece was published in 1919 and falls under the genre of cowboy descriptive. At least that's what IMSLP lists it as, though obviously the title also supports this with the two words alone, Western and Rodeo, which brings to mind images of the Wild West and cowboys riding into the sunset. And as we'll hear shortly, it was some of these qualities that I think we would recognise from later famous westerns as well. Now you're probably curious to know more about Adolph Minot, the original composer of Western Rodeo. Unfortunately there's very little information I've been able to find on him online. It's possible that the name is a pseudonym, because there were quite a few in various collections of these books and things like that. However, those pseudonyms tend to be revealed a lot of the time. So if anyone knows more about silent cinema than me and has anything to say on this, then I'd obviously love to hear from you in the comments. Interestingly, the piece we're exploring today also came as an orchestral version by Sol Paul Levi, a composer, clarinetist and publisher. This orchestration isn't available on our IMSLP, but there is a little more information on Levi than Adolph Minot. Levi's contributions to the world of music are broad. He performed in the famous The Sousa Band under John Philip Sousa and alongside renowned trombonist Arthur Pryor. He also assumed the directorship of an orchestrating department at Victor Talking Machine Company, known today as RCA Records. It appears some of Levi's music was also used in the 1940 Tarzan film. Although dying at 39, it was a short-lived career, and that was in the early 20s that he died, before Tarzan. Nonetheless, it's still a remarkable musical career. Moving on to the creative part of today's video then, the orchestration. I decided to go with a double winds orchestra because, well, there's no romantic way of really jazzing this up, but I saw the double winds option in the Sibelius menu and thought, sounds good to me. I thought it gave me a nice balance between colours, but also enough restriction to hopefully provide some creative challenge. As you've probably gathered, the Double Winds Orchestra features a standard string section along with pairs of flutes, oboes, clarinets, bassoons, horns and trumpets. I didn't add a harp to this mix or any keyboards. The only changes I made to the Sibelius default were to add a drummer and percussionist alongside the timpani. I like adding drum kits as I think they offer flexibility for you as the writer and for the performing group. For the performer, they can be read as either a percussionist, broken out into multiple parts, or as a drummer who can read them obviously directly. However, from a writing perspective, you have the standardised setup that you know can work in a stage layout as well, which I think is quite nice. One of the remarkable aspects of Western Rodeo is its flexible design. The composition showcases a cellular structure with a significant amount of repetition between phrases and smaller musical cells. This repetitive nature provides a unique opportunity for performers and arrangers to shape the music according to their needs. So I would be surprised if other pieces in the Cinema Incidental series are not very much like this, with a lot of repetition and a lot of cellular design. Imagine watching a silent film with Western Rodeo as the live underscore. The flexible nature of this composition allows the performers to tailor the music to fit the on-screen action. Repeats can be cut or added, and bars and phrases can be left out. It's all about synchronising the music with the overall scene and general action, even if the exact timings remain serendipitous. A larger scale feature of the Western Rodeo's flexibility is that it could function as either a binary or larger ternary form piece thanks to its main section and what's labelled as the trio section. The main opening section follows a contrasting binary form, which could stand on its own 2 feet as well, featuring 2 different repeated sections. The second part of the binary form then leads into the trio section. The trio section, on the other hand, follows a ternary form rather than binary form. It begins with an opening idea which then gives way to a contrasting middle section. This ends on a C major chord and is reasonably closed. This is the whole of the trio, that is. However, obviously that's not too distant to our G major starting point at the very beginning of the piece. So I think if the performer wanted, they could return to the opening section with relative ease. You could also do it at the end of the section I've labelled D on screen 2, which ends on a G major chord with motifs not too dissimilar to those heard in the earlier opening section as well, so they could help transition back to the beginning if you needed to as well. In fact, despite no clear marking, a return to the beginning could be implied by the use of the term trio. In marches, minuets and other dance movements, the use of a trio section is often the middle section of a larger ABA form. So you'd have the main minuet section, say, and then the trio section. The trio is then often marked by a del capo or del segno, instructing the player to repeat part of or all of the original minuet, the opening section. Or the minuet could be written out at the end afterwards rather than those del segno markings. However, in Western Rodeo, neither of those things happens. There are no del capo or del segnos, and the piece simply has a final bar line at the end of the trio. Now let's talk orchestration then. When faced with the task of arranging Western Rodeo, I had to consider the repeats and structure carefully. Should I vary the orchestration and the repetition of a phrase or section? In other words, simply put, if I had strings play one repeated section, should I add or replace them with something else? Or if I had one 2-bar gesture followed by the same 2-bar gesture either immediately or shortly after, should I vary the orchestration? To maintain a sense of cohesion and take advantage of the repetitive nature of the piece, I suppose to make it easier for myself and quicker to write, I decided to orchestrate quite economically. By keeping the orchestrations very similar and by placing many of the same repeat marks in the arrangement, I could leverage the power of repetition to guide my decisions while also speeding up the writing process. Rather than spend too much time dwelling or reimagining ideas too much, I felt I'd take advantage of those simple repeats. Though as we'll see, I also, if there's those kind of cellular repetitions within a repeated section, I do provide some orchestral variation. So now digging into the details, by comparing the opening of Western Rodeo in the piano version with my orchestration, there are a few key observations I want to highlight. The first is the addition of string flurries reminiscent of the strings that open the Big Country. The opening figures also reminded me of Aaron Copland's Hoedown from his ballet Rodeo, so I thought a prominent use of trumpets on the melody would be a nice strident opening. However, I also had in my head the use of more ornamental mordant-like playing in the woodwinds that added extra excitement by anticipating the beat with their akiakachuras. In revoicing the piano, I obviously explode and fill the chord outwards, as the piano is limited to 2 hands of the player. Yet, I think the idea, at least the twiddly semiquaver figure, technical term, implies something exciting. Plus, I'm arranging it without a brief, so it's my decision. Anyway, let's listen to the first repeated section of the piano version of Western Rodeo, and then my orchestration in full for that section. As you can hear, the addition of these string flurries and the woodwind ornaments brings a new dimension to the composition, capturing the spirit of the Wild West, whilst also fairly, and in my opinion respectively, expanding the piano score. The piano has to work within its limitations, whereas the limitations of the orchestra are different, so revoicing and adding ideas is perfectly legitimate. And you shouldn't be afraid to make similar decisions in your own orchestrations, as long as you consider things like style and what the intentions of the composer are. If we briefly expand our look to the wider repeated section, there's a repetition of the same idea within the opening itself. Simply repeating the orchestration of the opening seemed a little too much here, given the section does repeat as well. I didn't want the orchestration to become too repetitive and predictable, so I decided to reimagine it, bringing new colours and textures to the mix. In this reorchestrated version, the woodwinds take centre stage, playing the main idea in octaves, while the strings assume the role of what we might call the response idea that was previously given to the oboes and clarinets. By shifting the melodic focus to the woodwinds, the idea is revitalised, meaning the repetition when we go back to the opening and then hear this idea again too is not simply the same idea heard about 6 times. The octaves played by the woodwinds and then the strings provide a contrast to the initial iteration where the trumpets, oboes and clarinets took the lead. Now let's shift our attention to the beginning of the trio section of Western Rodeo. In this part I decided to use solo woodwinds and brass. Having the woodwinds dovetail a repeated line with one another, I thought this would be interesting as opposed to the default of strings. I also thought if I could make the section as light as possible with solo players, it could make for an interesting counterpoint with the fuller sections, particularly the opening part of the orchestration, which is quite full. To provide contrast, and because I thought it might sit better with the solo woodwinds, I request the use of cornets when the melody, or rather solo cornet, when the idea repeats. I think it'd be fine on trumpet, but cornets are mellower. Plus, it's my orchestration, and I like cornets, so yeah. And also, given I have a cornet and trumpet, and these being the 2 instruments that some people claim I don't consistently butcher, I thought I'd try and play the extract with each instrument so that we could hear the difference. I'm going to have to put my glasses on, I think, because I'm a bit far away from the musical screen because of the camera. Have you ever seen me in glasses? I'm dirty. As you can hear, the cornet brings a softer, mellower quality to the melody. I think it's more charming, where the trumpet is, I wouldn't say necessarily brasher, something I have in my notes here, but possibly more incisive, a bit more edgy than the cornet. So it's perfect for those earlier hoedown bits. It'll have the cornet will have the volume though to easily balance with the woodwinds, but its timbre will hopefully be more like the horn and how that effectively situates itself within a woodwind choir. So I thought the cornet could be quite a nice choice for that purpose. This is actually the only place an indication of the orchestration from Levi's version is given in the piano short score, and I somewhat ignore it. Admittedly, I took some inspiration from it by using horn and auxiliaries, the auxiliary for the trumpet, the cornet. However, as I said before, I felt a light, intimate chamber music touch would be quite interesting here in contrast to the rest of the music. Now let's delve into our last specific musical element, an arpeggio or broken chord figure in the middle part of the trio, what is bar 71 in my orchestration. In the piano version it is presented as a flowing passage, however for my orchestration I made a conscious decision to simplify it into a written out semiquaver or 16th note tremolo figure for the strings, which I hope will also allow them to enlarge their sound through the use of some double stops. Let's take a quick listen. By reimagining the arpeggio figure in this way, I aim to create a simpler but more impactful effect for the string section. The collective energy and precision of the strings would hopefully add a new level of intensity to the piece, giving it a bit more oomph for this section. So now, the moment we've all been waiting for, if you're still here obviously, the full orchestration of Adolphe Minot's Silent Cinema score, Western Rodeo. Instead of editing the orchestration against the orchestral score, I've decided to synchronise it in this video against the original piano score. This way, hopefully you can see the similarities and differences between the two versions. For those who prefer a separate score video of the orchestration, don't worry, I'll make that available as well, and I'll try to remember to put a link below. Comment if I don't do that, by the way. Now before we hand it over to the talented musicians of the Symphonic Slingers Note Performer Orchestra, I'd like to ask for your support. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. By doing so, you'll be part of our music-loving community and won't miss any future uploads. And if you really like what we do, here's an extra special offer for you. If you subscribe to Any Old Music's newsletter via the link in the pinned comment, you'll receive exclusive freebies like the score to this piece, that's my orchestration obviously, study materials that I create for email subscribers, such as the analysis summaries, where obviously I reduce the videos I create and the articles I make to sort of the key points, the key excerpts with some like bullet points and things like that to try and draw out just the essence of what's been said. It's a steadily developing resource, so I hope you'll join me and give me a reason to keep developing it. Now without further ado then, let's sit back, relax and enjoy the Symphonic Slingers Note Performer Orchestra as they bring my orchestration of Adolphe Minot's Western Rodeo to life. Thank you for joining me for this video today, and I hope to see you again soon.